Alright guys, so the first two problems, they order the numbers from least to greatest, so we're going to first have to change all the numbers into the same format before we can compare them. So here, if you look at these brackets, that is called the absolute value. Basically, the absolute value is how far away that number is from 0. So negative 3 is how many units away from 0? It's 3. So really, the absolute value of negative 3 is just 3. Okay, so I'm going to just write the numbers again, not in order, just so that they're all in the same format. The absolute value of 2 is 2, but there's a negative sign in front of it, so this becomes a negative 2. Okay, now we're going to list the numbers in order from least to greatest, but you have to list them using the original numbers. So what you can do is number them. So the smallest one is this one here. Okay, then the next smallest is here. The next smallest is here. Okay, that one's bigger. And then that one's the biggest. So now we're going to list them in order using the original form. So 1 is negative 4. 2 is negative absolute value of 2. 3 is negative 1. 4 is absolute value of negative 3. And then 5 is just the number 4. Okay. Number 2 is asking the same thing, but we want to change them all into the same format so we can compare them. I think it's easiest to change it into decimal form. Here is 21 over 2, 21 halves. Basically, if you divide 21 divided by 2, you're going to get 10.5. Okay, so this here is 10.5. This is already in decimal form, so we can just rewrite it the way it is. We're going to want to change this into decimal form too, so that's the same as 36 divided by 5. That's going to give you 7.2, and it's negative. And then 9.5 is already in decimal form, so we're just going to rewrite it. Okay. Now we're going to number them from smallest to biggest. So the smallest one is going to be the most negative number, so that's this one here. Then this one's still negative, so that's still small. Okay, then we have this one here. This one's the biggest. And again, always write your answer using the original numbers. So the first one is going to be negative 7.5. The second one is negative 36 over 5. The third one is 9.5. And the fourth one is 21 halves. And then let's go ahead and put a box around our answers so that it's very clear for us to see. All these here want us to simplify the expression. Remember, when you're subtracting a negative number, it's the same as adding the positive. Some of you guys remember keep, add, opposite. So actually, when you have these two negative signs together, you can connect them and make a big old plus sign because it's keep, add, opposite. This becomes 4 plus 3, which is simply 7. When you're adding opposites, think about teams. You have 2 people on the negative team and 15 people on the positive team. So they're playing a sport. Hey, who's going to outnumber? Who's going to win? Well, the positive team, they have more people. How many more people do they have? They have 13. Okay. Multiplication and division. Remember, you can use Sleepy Man. Okay, so you cover up whatever you're doing. A negative times a positive, you would cover up the negative and the positive, so you're left with a negative answer. So this is going to be negative 12. Remember, Sleepy Man only works for multiplication and division. Again, a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So 27 divided by 3 is just going to give you 9, but it's a negative. Here we need common denominators because we're dealing with a fraction. So let's turn the negative 1/6 into something over 12. Okay, we're going to bring this over. Since we multiply 6 times 2 to get to 12, it's going to be 1 times 2 to get to the numerator. So this is a 2, okay, but it's negative. Now you can just pretend like you're doing the tops, right? Negative 2 plus 7. Think of your teams again. What is that? So you're going to have a positive 5, right? So this is going to be 5 over 12. And you can't simplify it, so you're just going to leave your answer as is. Here we have decimals, so 0.24 minus 1.6. It's always, when you're working with integers, easier to change your subtraction problems into addition problems. Remember that rule, keep, add, opposite. So keep, this turns into plus. The opposite of a positive 1.6 is a negative, okay? And now we have a positive number adding to a negative number. When you have this situation, you're really subtracting, kind of like here, the negative 2 and the 7. You're really doing 7 minus 2, which is 5, and you take the sign of the number that's bigger. So here we're really doing 1.6 minus, you have to line up your decimals, right? 0.24, and then you're going to be borrowing, and it's just like your elementary school subtraction, okay? This time you get 1.36. Is it going to be positive or negative? In this case here, team negative wins, so your answer is going to be negative 1.36. Okay? You can think of it as money too. $1.60 is bigger than 24 cents, so this one is actually going to be larger. Number 9, we're multiplying. Multiplying is actually a lot easier than adding or subtracting. So first off, I would change this to an improper fraction. So 2 times 5 is 10, plus 3 is 13. So that's 13 fifths times negative 4 thirds. And you just multiply straight across. And remember, sleepy man can be used with multiplication and division. So this is a positive times a negative. It's going to give you a negative. You can cross cancel, but in this case here, there's nothing to cross cancel. So you get 15 on the bottom, and then go ahead and multiply 13 times 4. You're going to get 52. And depending on the question, you can leave your answer as an improper fraction, that's fine, or you can turn it into a mixed number. So if you were to turn it into a mixed number, remember you have to do 52 divided by 15, okay? Number 10 is dividing. It's a negative divided by 3.2, so negative divided by positive is going to give you a negative. You know your answer is going to be negative. So you would just do your division on the side, 24 divided by 3.2. Remember, when you're doing division, you have to move your decimal over here. There's a decimal here. You move that over. That becomes 240. Then you have to think, how many times is 32 going to 240? You might have to do some guessing and checking, all right? In this case here, it happens to be 7. 7 times 32. Let's try that out. Okay, again, this is going to take you a while to do if you're doing it by hand without a calculator, which you might have to end up doing on the S back. Okay, we subtract that. You get 16. Okay, bring down a 0. So now you think, how many times does 32 go into 160? Well, you do your guessing and checking. Turns out to be exactly 5. Okay, so don't forget your decimals here because we moved it over. So your answer is going to be 7.5. Okay? Positive or negative, guys? Negative. Because it's a negative divided by a positive. Okay, number 11. On an exam, you get 2 points for each question answered correctly, 0 points for each question left blank, and lose 1 point for each question answered incorrectly. So 2 points for each question answered correctly. What is your total score on the exam? If you answered 22 questions correctly, so that's times 2, right? Because it's 2 points each. Blank means you get 0 points, so 7 times 0 here. 5 questions incorrectly means you lose a point, so times -1. Basically, you multiply and then add everything together. So 22 times 2 is 44, right? 7 times 0 is 0. 5 times -1 is -1. Then you add these numbers together, okay? So 44 plus -5 is basically 44 minus 5. That's going to give you 39 points. 12 and 13 are asking you to solve. Solve means you want to isolate your variable. You want to get that variable alone. Okay, here we have some fractions, but we're still going to be doing the same steps that we've learned before. In order to undo addition, you're going to do subtraction. So you're going to subtract 2 and 4/5 on both sides. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. This goes away, you get x equals. Now we have to subtract fractions. So we're going to need to figure out the best way to do that. Some of you guys like to do the whole numbers first, like 3 minus 2, and then you do 1/6 minus 4/5. That's fine, you can do it that way. Some of you like to turn everything into improper fractions first, and then subtract. I like doing that way. Whichever method you choose, you will get the same answer. So 6 times 3 is 18, plus 1 is 19, so that's 19/6. Minus 5 times 2 is 10, plus 4 is 14, so that's 14/5. I know that my common denominator is going to be 30, so I'm going to use 30 here and 30 here. This means I have to multiply times 5, and then 19 times 5 is going to give me 95 here. I had to multiply it by 6 to get to 30 here, so I do 14 times 6. It's going to give you 84. And then I keep going. Okay, now it's just 95 minus 84. And that's going to be 11. So it's 11/30 is x. Okay, so I solved it. When you're being asked to solve, again, it just means get your variable alone. Number 13 is also asking to solve, but this time it's a two-step equation. So remember, you always want to undo addition subtraction first before you undo multiplication. So in this case, I'm going to subtract 1.2 here and here. And then that's going to get rid of that. 0.4a equals 2.4. Now I'm going to divide by the 0.4 because you're undoing the multiplication. Okay, so this goes away and you're left with your variable. Okay, whether or not you have a calculator on the test, you're going to be figuring out how to divide 2.4 divided by 0.4. Okay, that's going to give you 6. And in fact, it would be a -6 because we're doing a positive divided by a negative. Remember, according to Sleepy Man, a positive divided by a negative is going to give you a negative.